Hi there. I'm going to talk about how important it is to save up for retirement. But first, I wanted to mention I do talk about this during each of my classes, try to fit it in somewhere. And I've been doing this for quite a number of years. I ran into a former student recently. He took my statistics class 7 or 8 years ago, and he said the best thing about the class was this particular sheet of paper. He still has it, and it's posted on his refrigerator, and because of this he's been saving for retirement and he feels real good about where he is. So he said this was the best thing in the whole class that he remembers. Maybe it's the only thing in the class he remembers, but he was real appreciative that I shared this with him and everybody else. So I want to share this with everyone else. So before I actually get into this sheet right here where I talk about some of the numbers, let me tell you about, there are basically two kinds of retirement plans. One is called a defined benefit plan, and in this one the retiree's benefit is defined using some formula. So maybe it's based on how many years you worked for the company, how much your salary was when you retired, how old you are, different things like that, and then they calculate how much they're going to pay you per month during your retirement. The other kind is called a defined contribution plan, and in this one it's the company's contribution that's defined, again using some formula, maybe based on your age and how long you've been with the company, your salary, but also how well the company did last year or last quarter or something like that. And more companies have been moving away from the defined benefit plan and towards defined contribution plan. And if you think about the defined benefit plan, what the company is saying, if they hire you today at age 25, they're making a promise that 40 years from now or whenever you retire, they're going to start paying you some money, and that is going to last for maybe another 30 years after that. So they're really making a long-term commitment here. And who knows what's going to happen between now and 70 years from now. But with the defined contribution plan, the company is just making a commitment for this year or this quarter, depending on how it's spelled out. So it's a much shorter term commitment. The way it works, when you retire, you get the lump sum amount, whatever's in your account, but they are really just making a commitment to a very short term in the future. And again, depending on how well the company does, they can cut back on how much they put in there, or maybe put in more if the company does well. So it's harder and harder to find a defined benefit plan. More and more companies are moving towards a defined contribution plan. So that's one reason it's important for you to save up for your own retirement. Who knows what kind of money whatever company you work for is going to put into your account for your retirement. Also, who knows what shape Social Security is going to be in when you retire. So again, saving up for retirement now is really important, and that's what I want to talk about here with this sheet. And I'm going to talk about these three different people here, and they're all going to do the same thing. Each one of them is going to put $250 a month into some kind of a retirement account, earning 8% interest, and they're just going to do that for 10 years. And then the account is going to be held until they retire at age 64. So let's look at what happened with Glenn. So in his 20s, he had some student loans and other credit card debt he had to pay off, so he wasn't able to contribute to his retirement. In his 30s, he bought a house, had to put down a big down payment, and then the mortgage payments were pretty stiff, and then His kids had to go to college, so there were expenses there. But finally, age 55, he starts saving up for retirement. $250 a month for a whole year, that's $3,000 went into his account that year. And he did that for 10 years. And at the end of 10 years, he had paid $30,000 into his account. And because it was earning interest over all these years, the value of the account at age 64 was more than $45,000. That's more than 50% return. So he thought he did a pretty good job there of saving up for retirement. Okay, Glenn's brother saw this, and he thought, well, I want to do a better job than that. Again, he had some student loans to pay back and a house payment to make, but then he started 10 years earlier than Glenn. At age 45, he started putting that $3,000 a year into his retirement account. He did the same thing as Glenn, just did that for 10 years. And for the last 10 years before he retired, he didn't put anything into the account. But at the end of 10 years, he had done the same thing as Glenn. He had paid $30,000 into the account. But after he stopped paying, it kept earning interest. So by the time he reached age 64, his account was worth over $100,000, more than double what Glenn's was, even though they had put in the same amount of money. Well, there's a third person here in this fictional story, and that is Glenn's daughter. She saw what her dad did. She saw what her uncle did, and she said, I want to do something better than that. I'm going to start saving at age 25. Put that $3,000 per year into my account. Do the same thing as my dad and my uncle. Do that for 10 years. And then not add anything else into my account over all these years. I'll have money to buy a nice new car and some nice clothes and other things. And when I turn 64, I will have done the same thing as my dad and my uncle, put in $30,000 of my own money. But my account, because it's been earning interest all these years, it's worth more than $500,000. So that really is a good thing to do. And that's the title up here. Procrastination is costly. Compound interest over time is powerful. So starting to save for retirement earlier is a lot better. And if you think about these amounts in the accounts down here when they retire, if each of these people worked for a company who matched contributions, every dollar that you put in, they put in $1, then all these account values at the very bottom would be doubled. Glenn's daughter would have over $1 million. And let's again assume 8% interest. If Glenn's daughter has $1 million and it earns 8% interest over the next year, that would be $80,000 in interest. She could live off of that $80,000 and then still have $1 million in her account, and then do the same thing the next year. And of course, this does assume an 8% return, so I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But yeah, that story I just made up about these people, that was all fictional, but the numbers are all correct and accurate. I did put this together when I taught Math 10, so there's some references here to Math 10, and there are some formulas here. You can see how I did the calculations, but if you're interested, there are, I'm sure, online calculators that you can find that can do some calculations for you. You could change the interest amount or how much you put in per month and so on. But let me talk about that 8% interest rate return. there's this chart down here that shows how the Dow Jones stock market returned over a certain 100-year period. This isn't 100% up to date, but it does cover 100 years, I think from 1909 to 2009 or somewhere around there. So here's how to look at this chart. So this first bar way over here on the left, this would be if you put your money into the stock market for 1 year. And if you happen to hit the 1 year that was the worst year during that 100-year period, the worst year during that 1 year period, you would have lost, well, it looks like, 46% or something of your money, which is a pretty big loss. If you happen to hit the one best year during that 100-year period, put your money into the stock market just for that 1 year, the best return, the best 1 year return, well, it looks like 95%. You would have almost doubled your money during that 1 year. And if you average all those 1 year holdings over the 100 years, it is about a 9% return. That's what this little X is here in the middle. If we move over here and look at 2 years, so here you put your money into the stock market, and if you just happen to hit the worst 2 years out of that 100-year period, you would have lost, looks like about 39%. So not quite as bad, but still not too good. If you happen to hit the best 2 year period out of that 100-year period, it looks like about a, 43% return. That's a pretty good return. But there is less variation when you have a 2 year holding compared to a 1 year holding. And you can see how the variation decreases as your holding period gets longer and longer. And you get out here to 20 years, and if you just happen to hit the worst 20-year period out of the 100 years, you're still getting some money back. It looks like, what is that, about 3% or something? And the best 20 years looks like about 18%. So, yeah, there's a lot less risk if you have your money in the stock market for a longer period of time. And it continues out here. And for all of these, the average return is somewhere around that 8 or 9%. So I encourage you to print out a copy of this, put it on your refrigerator at home, start saving for retirement, and maybe 10 or 20 years from now you'll be thinking, I don't remember anything about that statistics class except this one sheet. And at that point you can email me and let me know how your retirement savings are coming along.